You're listening to another episode of From the Dust with Sarah Decker, a place to explore spiritual experiences and topics. And no, we are never alone. Hello and welcome to From the Dust. Today we are going to be talking about the Tower of Babel with our friend Matthew Gill, who translated the Chronicles of the Children of Aranek. And in this record is a couple different people that all came from the tower, and we're going to be bringing together so much of the different testimonies, I guess, we see in these different records to really talk about this, because there's a question of whether or not this really happened. So let's get into it today. Thank you so much for being here, Matthew.
It's a pleasure, absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
For sure. And also to introduce my mother, this is Janine Decker. She's my mom, and she also is a student of these records and has brought a lot of them together here and to testify of each other and to see how they compare. And they really tell the same story. So I'm excited to talk about it today.
I'm excited to be talking about it and to be on your show. And it's a pleasure to meet both of you. And for your mom for the first time, it's great to see you. So yeah, you just ask away and I'll do my best to fill in all the gaps.
Okay. Well, so one of the reasons I wanted to do this was because I heard some scholars say that they're beginning to believe that the Tower of Babel is just a fable story to teach people a lesson. And we have the brother of Jared in the Book of Mormon, Mahonrite, and then when I read your record, there were several groups. And so I'm like, this is not a fable, and I want to get it out there that there's more than one person that came from the Tower of Babel. So the beginning of your book, do you want to just talk a little bit about the beginning of your book and who the main person is?
Okay, well, before I do, just to pick up on your earlier point about the scholars thinking that the Tower of Babel is just a story or a mythological story to teach us a lesson. I do want to say I think it's dangerous when we start to look at scriptural stories such as the Tower of Babel or the flood or even the life of Jesus Christ and say, well, they're just a story to teach us a lesson about behaving ourselves and being good people. What that does, I think, is it takes away from the reality of the scriptures, and it takes away from the reality of Jesus Christ and our Father in heaven, because these things actually happen. When the scriptures talk about the world being created, we're talking about a real event. When we talk about the flood, we're talking about real events with real people, with real consequences. So it doesn't surprise me that people would say that it's just a story, because scholars and most scholars are trying to find a way around the reality of the scriptures to make it more digestible for people who don't believe in God. And that's okay. But for believers, I think it's very important that we are clear that these things actually happened. And when people like the brother of Jared or the Nephites or the people in the Book of Janine talk about the Tower of Babel, they're talking about a real event that actually happened, that it actually was a tower, and that God did actually confound the languages of the people around the tower. And I think that story is a lot more interesting than it just being a mythological event, because then you have to ask, well, God is capable of doing so much. And he's capable of doing so much in my own life. So, it's better to be repentant and just stay on the straight and narrow, as they say. So I just wanted to put that out there because I think it was important to stress that I believe that the account of the Tower of Babel is a real event. Because if you want to pick one, you want to pick the whole story. And once you want to pick the whole story, there is no reason to believe in God anymore. And I think that's very sad. But But getting back to the Book of Janine, which is what I know you want to talk about. The Book of Janine is fascinating because we do get, obviously, from the Bible, and we do get from the Book of Mormon, narratives about the Tower of Babel. However, both of those narratives are quite small, and they're from the perspective of one person or one recorder. Whereas in the Book of Janine, we get to know that the Tower of Babel impacted not just one people group, but 3 people groups. They being the children of Aramech, where Jarenek's line descended from, the people of Ridnon and Limdon, and the people of Morion, who lived in the far north of my country. So it impacted all of their lives. It impacted who they were, why they worshipped, why they kept records. So
I love it. I love it. I just want to read this one verse in your introduction. It says, the book of Janine testifies of a people that God brought from the Tower of Babel at the confusion of the language to Britain, much like the Jaredites who were led to the Americas.
Right.
So they ended up in Britain.
Yeah, I mean, so basically the Tower of Babel is the birthplace of every known civilization and culture throughout the world. And the scriptures tell us that during the Tower of Babel process, during the building of the Tower of Babel, God became angry because the people were trying to build or buy their way into heaven, is more accurate. And because of that, he confused the languages of those people. Now, the reason he confused the languages of the people, and we must understand this because it's in the record, is because when Noah left the ark, Noah was commanded, or his children were commanded, to go out into all the world. But they didn't do that. They stayed in one specific geographical location, built a civilization, and then, of course, ended up building this tower, which they wanted to go to heaven. And people such as Mahonri Moriankima, who was the brother of Jared, obviously records his experience with the Tower of Babel. And then with the Book of Janine, we get Aramech, the father of the people, his dealings or his account of the Tower of Babel. And because of this, we know that after the Lord cursed the languages of the people, that they had to leave the vicinity of the Tower of Babel. Obviously, not all of them did, because some stayed in the Mesopotamian valley. But most of the people groups spread out all over the world. The Jaredites made their way to North America or to Central America, or wherever you want to place the Book of Mormon. Right. For me, it's North America. And the children of Aramech moved their way through what you would say today is Asia Minor, Eastern Europe, then into Western Europe to France, and then eventually to Great Britain on the boats. But it's just a story of what I think happened to lots of different people groups. Yeah. The reason we don't know about those other people groups is because we don't have their records yet, although I'm sure they will come forth at some point.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about how different their experiences were.
Right.
So just because all of us have different experiences in life, and right. We all have different routes, but we're all going to our promised land, which all of these groups were.
Yeah.
So the Aramech and Janine had a very interesting trip.
Yes, I mean, if you take the Jaredite story, they tend to get to their promised land relatively quickly. I would say relatively quickly. I mean, they still wandered in the wilderness, but they get there relatively quickly. We know that because the brother of Jared goes to the promised land. However, with the Book of Janine, it's very different. We know from the record that they walked from the Mesopotamian valley through the Caucasus Mountains and into, I suppose you would probably say it's now in today's Russia. and then walked westward. But we know it took them a long time because the record tells us that Father Aronek died along that journey. Father Aronek never made it to his promised land. He never made it to Great Britain. It was his children and his grandchildren that made it to Great Britain, to their promised land. But even so, they had a lot to overcome before the Lord would allow them here to Great Britain. They had to sort out issues dealing with unrighteous people marrying righteous people, righteous women marrying unrighteous men. They had to sort out who was going to be the leader of the people, who was going to be ordained as a prophet. And then that's build the boats, and then that's a whole different story. But yes, their journey wasn't a simple one, and the protagonist never reaches the goal. He never makes it there. He dies along the way, seeing his children fracture, seeing his people argue about who has right to title and leadership. So I think for Aronek, it's a very sad ending to his story. He never sees a resolution to that, and it's left to his sons, Sharonek and Hajanek, to make that resolution, to bring the people together. Obviously, Lionek's gone. He's no longer in the picture. He's gone eastward, so he's out of the picture.
Yeah. So they built things along the way.
They
Can
did.
you tell us some of the things that they built?
Okay, so from the record itself, we know that they built stone monuments, megaliths along the way, and they built them along the way for the purpose of others who would follow after them, knowing that they were righteous people. Now, I don't know how much you know about ancient Great Britain, but our country, from the plains of Wiltshire in the south to where I am today at my in-laws in Scotland, is full of stone circles. It's full of stone monuments. It's full of barrows, hills, burial mounds. They brought with them a culture of building monuments. Those monuments were built to the glory of God, so that the people coming after them from the Mesopotamian Valley, from the Tower of Babel, whoever they may be, would know that the people who journeyed down this road were believers and that God was with them, because look what they've done. They've built these big things, you know. So I think it's an encouraging story. And obviously for me, I live here and I can see these all around me. So, I mean, from my home in Derbyshire where I live, about a 15-minute journey, you come to a place called Arborough, which would be in the lands of Ridnon, and it's just a megalithic site. It's wonderful, wonderfully old, and it's just awe-inspiring. So these people were dedicated to this job, dedicated.
It must be really cool to have a sacred place nearby. You know, we live in Missouri and we have Adamondiaman and Far West, where we can go when we really want to feel the Spirit strongly. And I don't know if those do that for you.
Yeah, they do. I mean, you guys are super fortunate. I mean, not only do you have Adamondiaman, I mean, crikey, you've got the whole place where the restoration really kicked into high gear. I mean, I would, oh, I don't want to say that. I would give most of my possessions to be there. But yeah, I mean, when I go to places like Stonehenge, when I've been there a couple of times, when I go to Stonehenge, which is a long way from where I live, it's about a 4-hour journey. It's just, you get a feeling there that I've never felt anywhere else. And then I'm very fortunate that, just as I say, 15 minutes from my home, I can go into the wilds of Derbyshire and the hills, and I can see these ancient buildings, because that's what they are. They're ancient temples, they're ancient buildings now in a ruin. And you stand there and you pray to God when you're there, and you ask him to touch you. And the spirit that comes over you is immense. So my son and I and my father, we go there as often as we can. And it's just a wonderful place. It's just an awe-inspiring place. You look out. And because I know what I know and we know what we know who built these. We know who they were. They weren't just a tribe of meandering wild people. They were an organized civilization, thirsty and hungry for God. And yeah, it's just an amazing experience. I'd love for you guys to experience it. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I was gonna say I would not be opposed to a tour at some point in my life. That would be
well.
wonderful.
If ever you make it over to Great Britain, I could take to some wonderful places. And once you've read the Book of Jaranek and you know who these people are intimately, you know these places were really special. So yeah, it's good.
Well, there's a saying out here, and I believe that once land is dedicated to a temple to God, it's always dedicated.
Yeah, definitely. Well, when we went to Arbelo, I think we went there a couple of years ago. Maybe it might have been sooner. I did a video there and I put it on my YouTube channel. And my son did all the editing and the music. And I know, because we know, that we have stood on the burial ground of Hajanet. We've stood on his burial mound. We've been there. One of the 7 churches that he built in the land is in Arbelo. So we were all greatly touched by it, and wonderful experience. Wonderful experience. Yeah.
Very cool.
That's a great, I don't know the word, history left for you, to dip into.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things that I love about the different records that are coming forth, like the Chronicles of the Children of Aranek, that co-testify, I guess, of the things we see in the Book of Mormon, as well as in the Bible. It's just that they keep adding their voices to that testimony. So, and then they brought in the picture. And as we were looking through the different things that are said about the Tower of Babel in the different records, it paints a broader picture of what really happened, because each have their own flavor of things that were important to them to mention. And so then it comes together to this really interesting picture.
It's the beauty. And I don't understand why more people aren't getting excited about it. I mean, we have to be careful. We have to use a spirit of discernment when we talk about new things that come forward. And I've been doing this for a very long time. And you have to be careful. You have to discern with the spirit. You have to be prayerful about these things, because not everything that comes forward is accurate, and not everything that comes forward is true either. And I've been through that, and the beauty of it, though, and I don't know why people aren't getting excited about it, is when you find a record that the spirit testifies to you is true, and you know it's true because you've read it and you've prayed about it and you've received the witness that it's true. The beauty of these things is they all bear testimony in their own way of the other records that have come before. Yes. The beauty of the Chronicles of the Children of Aranek, for me, when I was translating it and now, I'm putting it out there, is because there is so much within those pages that testify of the Book of Mormon. Yes. In several places, at the beginning of the book, in the middle of the book. And not only that, but they testify of the same God. What I find beautiful about it is I can read the Book of Mormon. I've been reading the Book of Mormon today. I'll be reading my Book of Mormon today. I don't know where I am. I'm in Alma at the moment. And I'm reading about the same God I read about in the Chronicles of the Children of Aranek. It's not 2 different gods, because they all teach the same thing. They all testify of Jesus Christ. They're all trying to get to Jesus Christ in their own way, in their own special, unique way. But the beauty of it is, when you read it, the Spirit testifies of Christ for me. The red flags are, for me, when and I have read many, is when they don't correlate with things we already have, or they rebuff things we already have, and they make the gospel difficult. I think I said the last time I was on your your podcast is one of the things I think we tend to do. Gospel far too difficult. The gospel's very, very simple, really. The gospel is about an intimate relationship between you and Jesus Christ, and then by extension, our Father in heaven. Everything else around that is just window dressing. And I think that's what these records should do, and when they are accurate, do very well.
Yeah, they do. Thank you. Thank you very much. Just from what you said, I want to bring in a couple of the verses from the first part of the book.
Sure.
Because I was super excited. I'd love to read books and have it connect with the Book of Mormon. So Aranek is a great prophet, and him and his leader of his armies decide they're going to go preach and teach. And I love this one verse by the leader of his army. His name is Shiblon. And he says, with one great hand upon my sword and one upon the shoulder of my prophet, we will go forth with great authority and power. How beautiful. And then they take an 8-day journey and they see the tower and they're overwhelmed. And they decide, you know what? Let's go talk to our friend Mahanrai.
Right.
And they've got Brother Jared in the first chapter.
Yeah.
Oh, and you're like, I know the Brother Jared.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's the beautiful thing. I mean, when we were translating it, and these things came out of the translation process, it was like, wow, this is amazing. Not only have we got a wonderful story about a friend, two friends journeying together to see another friend whilst trying to sort something else out. You have a very powerful message there about one hand on my sword and one hand on the shoulder of my prophet. I think sometimes we tend to keep maybe one hand on the shoulder of the prophet and the other hand just loosely by our sides every now and again. I think they're trying to tell us here that you can't have one without the other. You know, the sword does need to be wielded every now and again, but it needs to be wielded in righteousness with my hand on the shoulder of my prophet. And that's a beautiful story. And the really beautiful thing for me at the end of their journey is not necessarily the Tower of Babel thing, because you know, that can be quite daunting and depressing for people. They go to see a friend encamped on this river, and they know each other. They're not strangers. They know who they are. Come in, sit at my fireplace. Let's talk. You know, let's have a meal. It's just exactly what I would do if a friend came to my home.
Well, you know, they say if you picked your 5 people, you know, that you were going to go to battle with, and they choose Mahanrai, and it says Aranek, Shiblon, Mahanrai, and his brother Jared to take their journey to the city of Nimrod.
Right.
You know, and so there you got.
That's a powerful group right there. Yeah. That's a powerful group.
Yeah. It's so cool.
And when I think I would encourage more people to read the Chronicles of the Children of Aranek, obviously. But I think the reason I would do that is because you get more of an insight, I think, into the nature of the brother of Jared, Mahanrai Mariankula. And you get an insight into the relationships they had with people before getting to the Americas. They did have a life before they got to the Americas. You know, these people did exist. They did live. They did have friendships and people groups that they're associated with. And then, of course, when they get to the Tower of Babel, their story sort of separates.
Yeah.
You don't really hear much more of Mahanrai other than the fact that Jaranek alludes to the fact that the people of Aranek did journey with the Jaredites for a period of time.
And then they split.
They split. Yeah, so you can imagine that, can't you? You know, Mahanrai's going, well, we need to go west and we need to go east. And okay, thank you. Wonderful. We'll see you in the future sometime, you know. And the beautiful thing is, when you read later on in the book of Jaranek, of course, is that you find Jaredites coming to Great Britain anyway. So they're coupled together for eternity, really.
That's kind of that's great. Thanks for bringing it out. So let's go on to
Rignon and Limden.
Rignon and Limden, yeah.
Okay,
because their story, so the tower falls, you know, and it's destroyed. They're all there for that.
Yeah.
They're all there. That's in the very next verses.
Yeah.
And then their languages are changed. And then
Yeah.
you get the story of these two people.
Yeah, so basically, the gist of the account is that the people of Aranek and the Jaredites are that they don't have their languages changed. They retain the language of their forefathers, which would be the Adamic language that Adam and Eve brought out of the garden. So they retain that language. So we know that there are two people groups on the earth who have retained their first language. What this record tells us is, and really we don't get a full account of the people of Ridnon and Limdon until we get to the book of Raanek. Yep. The book of Raanek expands on their history. Basically, what happened at the Tower of Babel with people of Ridnon and Limdon is they had their languages changed, I would imagine, because they were naughty people at some stage. And they had their languages changed, but because they had the same language, they drew themselves together as a people group. And they are led from the Mesopotamian Valley across North Africa into Spain, and then from Spain to Great Britain eventually. But they are not led by accident. They are led by an angel who appears to them in a cloud of fire. So their journey is really spiritual. Like the Jaredite journey is led by a cloud of fire. So the children of Aranek. However, none of them really are led by a personage. They make their own ways. But the people of Ridnon and Limdon are led by an angel. And without that angelic interference, they, I think, would not have made it to where they needed to be. I think they needed that guidance because they weren't a righteous people from the beginning. They needed that guidance. They needed the hand of the Lord with them. And then eventually, of course, they are moved by this angel in a cloud of beautiful light and fire to Great Britain.
They're transported.
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
They're just transported. Let's just take you over here. Totally story.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's a totally different story to the Jaredites, to the people of Jared who had to build boats and ships. And these people, no, it was like, well, we're going to take you there right away. The beautiful thing about their account is that they really become extremely righteous, religious people, and from their line, they keep records. Now, we know that the people of Aranek didn't keep records before they met the people of Ridnon and Limdon. They didn't keep written records. When they met the people of Ridnon and Limdon, they suddenly learned the importance of it because the people of Ridnon and Limdon taught them the importance of it. And they were taught the importance of it by the angel who ministered to them. So the people of Ridnon and Limdon become the really righteous priestly class of the people. They're the guides for everybody else, really.
I think so. It's pretty cool that, they were instructed to find ore, not to build boats, to find ore. They were instructed to find ore and make plates and do records. Yeah,
it's their first task because I think, although I've translated it, they were told their first priority was to make records. Then don't worry about food. We'll provide you with the food because you're going to be too busy. Yeah.
They did. You're right. They totally, an angel comes. Let me see. I have it highlighted here.
While she's finding that, I just wanted to comment that, it's lovely from the outside looking in, being able to see that each group had their assignment from the Lord and that those assignments were different and they have their own purpose. And, not only for the people in their situation right then and their needs, but also for the story, the record that comes out of those experiences and what it can teach the people looking in.
I think the Lord is, he's so much more intelligent than we could ever dream of being, because he puts in Great Britain 3 different kinds of people groups. He gives the people of Aranek, the people of Ridnon and Limdon, who are really one people group, and the people of Morion in the north. And eventually he brings them all together. Eventually each piece fits where it's supposed to fit. The record keepers and the priests come. The people with the prophets come. The people from the north come with their wonderful history that they sing to one another. And she marries the king, and it blossoms into a golden age. And the Lord is purposeful about everything he does. They're all led there with their, like you say, with their each individual assignments and duties. But in the end, he brings it all together to make it all work. And that's the beauty of the record for me.
That's really true, because Jeranek does a physical thing, leaves physical evidence of a god.
Right. Yeah.
Because they're helped by angels. And then Ridnon his people are more the physical, the builders, the doers, and Lidnan's is the record keepers and the spiritual. So you have a huge spiritual group here.
Yeah.
So you got the physical and you got the spiritual.
Yeah. I think it's important not to underestimate that within the record, because there are so many things that the children of Aranek don't do before they meet the people of Ridnon and Limdon. They don't esteem womanhood or motherhood in very high esteem, which is really strange. They don't keep written records. The only thing they have going for them is the fact that they have from God the permission to have what's called a prophet or an anointed one amongst them. None of the other people groups have that, which is why I think he brings them together. But the beauty of it is when they join with all these other groups, they learn to appreciate women. They learn to appreciate their role within the family and within the church and within the gospel. And without those things coming together, it would have been an absolute disaster for each of those individual groups, because they all brought something together they all needed.
Exactly. And so the spiritual group, Linton and Rindon, I'm just thinking that the reason they were transported, and the reason they had food provided, what a great testimony to these people that God is with them, and then they have all this time to write and teach that the others didn't have, because they're faster,
Exactly. The beauty of the Ridnon and Limdon story is that when they behold an angel and they see what this being is capable of, they don't question.
Yes.
Unlike the children of Aranek, when the Lord says to them, build the ships, they go, oh, I don't know if we can do that. Is that really what we need to do? Yes, it's exactly what you need. They don't do that. They see this powerful angel, and that they see the power behind it, which obviously is Jesus Christ, and they just run with it. They go, yes, this is exactly what we want. This is exactly what we need. Let's not question it. Let's just do it. We should all be more like that, actually, but,
Yeah.
It's hard. We're probably more like Aranek's people than Ridnon and Limdon.
Well, and I'm sitting there thinking about, as you're talking, both of your points, is that how much we need this record today, and how, there's other records outside of the Chronicles of the Children of Aranek and the Book of Mormon that testify of this day, and how we need to unite and bring together our understandings of multiple people to then accomplish who we really need to be to welcome the Savior back.
Right. That is such an important point.
Yeah, and I think about that, and I've been kind of that's one thing I so appreciate about the Chronicles of the Children of Aranek, is how they keep bringing in these groups and connecting them, and then they say, well, what beautiful truth do you have? What beautiful thing do you bring in? And let's join those together. And they have the humility and the obedience to the Spirit that's already witnessed to them to do this, right? And so then they're coming together and they're accepting each other, the good parts, right? And so there's a lot of in our world today, we just see a lot more pride that's like, no, I don't want any of that, right? Like, no.
Right.
And but I think that it is a key that many people are unlocking, that God is teaching them that this is what's necessary to welcome in those beautiful parts that are true. And let's come together, because really once we have the bigger picture, we'll be more prepared.
I think that's so true, because I think The one thing that I think the Restoration family struggles with, for lots of different reasons, is we don't tend to have a lot of unity. We tend to have tribes. My tribe's bigger than your tribe. My tribe's richer than your tribe, whatever it might be. But one thing we can learn from both the Book of Mormon and the Chronicles is that unless we are prepared as a people to put aside our pride and our claims, whatever they may be, and work together, we are not going to accomplish what the Lord wants us to accomplish. And I think it's so right what you've said, because we do need to embrace those things that make us unique and bring them together. The Book of Janine talks about the Second Great War, and the people that came about during the Second Great War didn't want that. They wanted to be separate. They didn't want anybody else. They wanted to esteem themselves higher than everybody else, and it caused a war and it caused a lot of suffering.
Right.
And I think we can see patterns of that within the Restoration family. And I think the more people like yourselves that are putting out this message that, let's embrace these differences. Let's bring them together. Let's hear them out, and let's unify, I think, is a great message, one that we should really listen to more often.
Yeah, and I love that you can come at it from, anyone can come at it from different angles, because you can come at it from, oh, look, we're getting a greater history of the world. You could look at it as reading these records and saying, hey, how do they testify of each other? Which ones don't quite fit? And is that because they're man-made, or is it because we don't have the whole story and we just don't understand it yet? And so for me, it broadens your mind in so many different ways. And I can see how, if people are willing in their hearts to receive them, that they can even learn in many different facets, depending on which way they want to approach the scriptures. I hope that made sense.
Makes perfect sense. Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah, I totally agree.
So Rendon and Lyndon, I'm going to say it wrong. They came, very amazing. Okay, very amazing story. Angels provided food, water. They never did without. They're transported over. What a great, amazing story. Then we have the people of Morion.
Right.
So theirs was different. They came by way of war. It doesn't give us a ton of information. Maybe you can expound on that. Okay,
yeah. I've been asked questions about, when we have study groups, I've been asked questions loads of times about people of Morion. What we know about them, obviously, is what was being written by the people within the Chronicles itself, because they didn't keep written records and they sang their history, which I find really fascinating. I think we don't know their full history. What we do know, however, is they did come from the Tower of Babel. But they journeyed to another land first. Now, I have no idea where that other land is, but they journeyed to this other land, and they got into war, and they got into famine, and they got into real trouble. And then the Lord picked from out of that people group, I want to say women, because the Morion society is very matriarchal. It's not patriarchal, which is why she's so important to the story with regards to bringing her people down. That he picks out from the people of Morion women, really, who are perceptible to the will of the Lord, and he brings them to Britain. He brings them actually into where I am now, to Scotland. And they are here for a very, very long time before they're discovered. They have had a history and some before they're found, because we know that some of their civilization has fallen away and it's been rebuilt, and it's fallen away and it's been rebuilt. Whether they were here on this land before everybody else, I've been asked that before, and I would say I'm hedging maybe, but I don't know. And the reason I don't know is because they don't have written records. However, what we do know about the people of Morion is that obviously that they are matriarchal. They're led by women, strong, powerful women, right? Which is, again, for me, when I was translating it, coming from my background, of course, was a total eye-opener, because, wow, wow, that's amazing that women can be that powerful within the structure of the gospel of Jesus Christ, right? And it's a beautiful story, because when she comes down from the land northwards and meets her future husband in King Rayna, I mean, he just falls head over heels for this woman. Not because she's necessarily wonderfully pretty, but because of her nature, because of the way she leads her people, because of the way in which her people love her so much. And how could he not fall in love with that woman? For me, it's one of the more beautiful stories in the book.
It's definitely a beautiful love story. I just want to read what it says in verse 18. Morion was taken hold of by the Spirit. So it was this when she stood before Raynon. Now he's the leader of Aramaic people.
Yeah.
Morion was taken hold of by the Spirit, and so was Raynon, that they fell in love. And upon her request, her people became joined with our people, and they were joined together in marriage. With their joining came a great time of love and peace, and all our people were blessed because of our great love and peace for one another and for all strangers.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. And it brings in a golden age, like you said. This love, and maybe music and song help bring that.
Oh yes, definitely. Yeah. If you read the record, you know that these people danced a lot, had a lot of feasts and celebrations. They weren't afraid to show their love in song and dance. She brings that to the people.
Yeah.
I mean, taken off hold by the Spirit. These two people, they didn't see each other go, wow, what a stunning woman, what a stunning guy. The Spirit takes hold of them and brings them together. And the reason that Raynon's people have this time of love and understanding and it's because of Moria. It's because of her. Yeah. I often say to people, if you don't understand that, you're not reading it right. It's her. She's doing all this. She made him a better king. She makes the people better. Her whole people make everybody else better, and we get this glorious golden age which lasts forever. So
it's so full of motherly love when I'm reading that. It's like,
yeah,
oh, you're new here. Come here. Come here. We love you.
Yeah. Well, don't forget the people of Aranet, where Raynon's from. Their history is not great for women, right? But over time, the Lord says, no, you need to cherish these people. They are important to the story. They're important to the eternities. And that's why he does what he does in the way he does it, which is fantastic.
Even the way God prepares them for Morion,
Oh, yeah.
God brings in Ryden and Lyndon first and teaches them women are important and women have a place. It's time to accept that. And then they bring in, then comes this powerful matriarch group. Yeah. And then they have this beautiful golden age from it. It's like they're ready for it now.
Yeah, it's incredible, really, when you look at all the things that happen to these people, and all the circumstances that line up, so that the people around it can cherish motherhood. They can cherish their wives. They can understand that they can take a part within priesthood duty. They can take an active part within the gospel. And then, of course, later you got this matriarch of leading these people from the north down into the south with all their people behind them. They wouldn't have been ready for that without the stuff before. But I have a picture that I had done by an artist of both of them, Morion and Raynon, and they're together in the picture. The picture's like this huge. And I said to the artist before he did the picture, you've got to make sure that when you depict this woman, that you channel your inner feminine, because she was a pretty powerful figure. And I was pretty pleased with what we got back. But every time I look at that picture, I think, wow, she was amazing. Yeah, absolutely astonishing.
I keep thinking that there's a message in there for people who want to get married. It's like, who do you want to become? I mean, this woman was ready to be matriarch of a kingdom, of a whole society. and she was ready to take on that part. And so what do we want when we're looking, who do we want to be? We have to become that person to get that person, So
I think for not so I don't want to put a downer on anything, but I think far too often men within the gospel, they tend to look at their future partner with a certain set of criteria, and what the Chronicles allows you to do is look at women in a new and different light, with power. I mean, my wife is extremely, I would say she's extremely powerful as a matriarch. And that's what you want from your partner. You both have different roles to fulfill. You don't want to be domineering over your wife, and you don't want your wife to be too domineering over you. And you want this perfect union. You can have that. It's not impossible, but you've got to look for the right qualities in the people that you're going to end up being. And the scriptures and the Chronicles can help form that perception. If all women were or ever had been like unto Marion, so yeah, I think she's powerful, and I think her story is very powerful. And I think it's probably one of the most powerful stories to come out of the Chronicles, for me.
For me, I think it's lovely because God's taken her on this journey, and she already is this powerful person because of obedience. She's become this powerful person. It is within her. It is who she is. And then God puts that man in her path, and they're in each other's path, and it just is exactly what it needs to be, and they're who they need to be, and then they just celebrate. It's like hallelujah.
Hey. Yeah, let's have a party, basically.
Let's have a party.
And for like 100 years, and for 100 years or so, the whole civilization was having this great time. So what a great union. Yeah, what a great union. But
until pride came in, and then it started separating, dividing everybody.
Yeah. That's because just like in the Book of Mormon, you get these wonderful periods of 100 or 200 years of Zionic life, where you feed the hungry, and you clothe the naked, and you invite them into your home, and then of course, like every new generation that's born in that period, the newer generation forgets a little bit more every time about why you are where you are and who made that possible. Now, if we look at the last days, it's exactly the same thing. Every new generation that's born, for me, which is why it's so important we teach our children correct principles, is each generation moves further and further and further away from our roots. And unless we are prepared to teach them about their roots and hold them strong to those roots, they will naturally drift, because that's who we are. Unfortunately, we are fallen beings, and that's what we will tend to do. We will tend to drift to ignorance, pride, arrogance, all those things. And that's what happens in the Book of Jaranek. That society, which is wonderful, golden age, drifts to pride, arrogance, hatred, murder, bloodshed. The thing about the Book of Jaranek for me, on the flip side, is you've got this wonderful woman, Marion, who is like the epitome of matriarchal bliss, right? And you'd love to meet her. And then on the flip side, a couple of 100 years later, you've got, and she's not even named in the record, which says a lot. You got the evil queen. And she can't even stand her own children. I mean, she's doing some horrible things to her own children. These are two completely opposite examples here. But I think the reason that's in there, it could have been so easy for Jaranek to leave that out. Let's not mention the evil queen. Let's keep that in the dustbin for a minute. Let's keep it in the trash. We don't need that. But he leaves it in because it teaches us a valuable lesson. This is what you can become if you don't cling to God. This is what happens, to everybody.
Well, and it's a good lesson too, because a lot of times people say, well, women are just so giving. Women are just so kind. Women are just, and they say this, they're so motherly. And yeah, we can be.
Yeah.
But there's lots of women who aren't any of
Oh
those
yeah.
things. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
it's just a reminder of how do we really stay true to who we really are? You know,
Right.
because I think in our spirit we truly are brighter, more loving, more full of love and kindness. But what are we choosing to be? And it really,
Right. Exactly. I mean, well, I don't know her name. I haven't been told her name, and I haven't really wanted to know her name, to be honest. But the evil queen didn't get the way she was by birth. She got the way she was by her life and her choices and the people she associated with and the books she read or didn't read. Uh,
So I think my mind keeps going back to Morian because
right.
her people got there by war. So,
Right.
and she was a leader.
Mm.
So I'm picturing this woman who's seen conflict,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
A lot of conflict, led her people through heartache and conflict, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not picturing this motherly, huggy woman, you know, but she's choosing she brings in song and dance and joy. So she's seen the ugly, okay, but she's not letting it take her. She's choosing the joy. She's choosing, you know, Moroni kept coming back to the Lord, you know.
Right.
And I see very similar how Moroni would do a battle and then he'd come back and celebrate God and how he helped him, you know, and I picture her the same way. We see a queen with a crown and beautiful clothes, but I see a warrior, okay?
Oh yes.
Um,
Yeah.
in who she is. And if we go contrast that to this queen, this wicked queen, I feel like she got what she wanted and pushed to get what she wanted. And it was all about her and what she wanted. And where the other woman was a leader, or true leader.
Yeah. I mean, it's very powerful when you hear other people who have read the book talk to you about these people and what they get from the book, because and I've heard lots of people talk to me over the years about what they think and what they see and how they feel about these people, and every time I hear somebody really talk about these people, it's really powerful to me, really powerful, because it makes everything that we have been through and everything that the Lord has had us on a journey doing all the more worthwhile, knowing that it's touching people's lives in such a way that it brings them happiness and joy and the Spirit, and it strengthens their relationship with Jesus Christ. The ignorant people would have you say, oh, you read this and there's nothing in it. Well, if you bring something like that to the pages of a book, you're going to get what you bring to the situation. But just like the Book of Mormon, but it's really powerful to hear you talk about it and you get excited, and you know, it's really, really wonderful. Yeah.
well, and it's interesting because going back to the Tower of Babel, you know, these people left the Tower of Babel, the civilization on collapse, you know, major decline, sudden, and and yet they leave and they have their own circle. They own their own pride cycle, you know, as and where they then fall and rise again and fall and rise again, you know, and have their own issues. And we see this repeated through history in all societies. And the Tower of Babel was just another version of that same story. You know, it's just the humanness, and that was their flavor of pride, and that's their flavor of hubris and everything else that they brought to the situation. But it's really the same story that we hear all throughout time.
It's exactly the same story, and the sad thing about it is they didn't learn from where they came from. You know, they came, all these people groups, they came from a situation where they had seen a civilization rise and rise and rise, and then all of a sudden fall. I mean, very suddenly, when God said no, it was no. And they saw that, and yet still They have, like you say, they went through the same cycles over and over and over again. And they didn't. The sad thing is, and it's reflected in the Book of Mormon, it's reflected in virtually every scripture I've ever read, is we don't tend to learn very well as human beings. We don't tend to look back and go, well, we made that mistake there. I don't think we're going to do that again. No, we tend to do the same thing over and over and over again, which is why I think the scriptures are so important. When you look at the Tower of Babel story, which is why I said what I said at the beginning, you cannot approach it as a mythological story, because as soon as you do, it loses all punch and power. It loses all of its importance. When you read that account from the Bible to the Book of Mormon to the Chronicles, you understand what we're capable of as human beings, really, and what some of the things that we can do if we're left to our own devices, which is why we need God. And God said to these people at the Tower of Babel, no, you tried to come to me on your terms, but that wasn't what I asked you to do. So now I'm going to change all of your languages. I'm going to destroy your civilization. I'm going to scatter you to the four corners of the earth. And it's taken us this long right now. And we're only just starting to get the fruits and the treasures of those civilizations coming out, the records, the histories, the stories. And which is why it's so important not to dismiss. If somebody in Scandinavia said, the Lord led me to this, and I got this book, and I'd read it and I'd give it house room, because I think the moment we dismiss it, we're dismissing ourselves. We're dismissing what we are and who we are in our story. And we must remember that the Tower of Babel is there for a reason in the scriptures. It's not just there as a nice story. It's there for a purpose.
It is, I was thinking on a personal level, I go through the cycles of pride,
Right.
and I'm always having to go, oh, I have to stop, let that go, get rid of that. I don't want that. And I forgive me for that. And then I'm good for a while, nurturing, motherly, loving, and then it starts building back up again. And so we have this big, huge example of the tower. Yeah. And then we have society that we normally go through these cycles, and we need to take it in personally and acknowledge it in ourselves when we're having those.
Oh, absolutely.
The cycles. Yeah.
When Jesus walked the earth, and he taught the people in the Middle East, he taught them truth. He taught them facts. So when he refers to the flood or the tower, which he does on occasion, he's referring to a real event. And the reason he knows it's a real event is because he was there. So it serves, as you just said, it serves, or it should serve, a big purpose in our lives. Each of those stories, whether it be the creation, the flood, the Tower of Babel, they all serve a story and they all serve a purpose. They teach us who we are and what we need to be. And as soon as we start to do what unfortunately many people are doing now, even within the Restoration, you start treating these as stories, as fairy tales, we give away a part of our inheritance, unfortunately, to the adversary. We give that away. And that's exactly what he wants. He wants us to give away the Tower of Babel, because as soon as we give away the Tower of Babel, there's no consequence for sin. There's no consequence for misbehavior. You can do whatever you like. There's no consequences. And every one of those stories tell that there's a consequence for Adam and Eve. There was a consequence for the people of Noah's day. There's a consequence for the Tower of Babel. And all the way through history, there are these points. We cannot afford to give those away. We need to stay strong around those real, true life events. They are who we are.
Yeah. And I was thinking about that because, if we start giving that away, as you were saying, then we have this idea that it doesn't matter then what we do. But then if you look at those same stories, it's not just that something bad happened to the wicked people. It's that good people are totally wiped out in history because of people who don't think their actions have consequence and their desires are the only thing that matters, And then the whole groups of people, whole towns, civilizations are wiped out and destroyed. And just think about the great sadness that brings and pain that brings upon the earth. And so it's like, well, okay, what outcome do we want here? What outcome do I want my life or my motherhood, or, like, what is my goal here? What kind of world do we desire to create through our behavior and our actions and our focuses and who we are truly in our hearts, So I think it's important to not forget the other end of the effect those kinds of attitudes really have on the earth, and that these histories show us the negative consequences of some of those ideologies that we hear a lot now.
Right.
In a big way.
In a really big way, not in a small way, in really big ways.
Big way. I love the Chronicles of Aranek because, we've had that Jared survived, the brother of Jared and Mahonri survived, and they were the righteous people who survived. Well, now we have more. There were survivors. Okay.
Yeah.
We also want to know there were survivors, that there were lots of good people that were saved and brought and did end up covering the whole world, right? Because
yeah. I mean, and that's that for me. That's the beauty, I suppose, of the Tower of Babel narrative. Is that there wasn't just one group of righteous people that were saved. Maybe there were two, maybe there were three, maybe there were four. But also, we know through the Chronicles of the Children of Aranek that redemption is a major part in the story, because the people of Ridnon and Limdon, well, they had their languages changed. So they were probably involved with the tower building and with some of the naughty stuff. But eventually they received redemption. They received redemption through God. They received redemption, and they were led by an angel to their promised land, where, there's so many wonderful stories from the Tower of Babel that are pertinent to the gospel story.
Yeah, and I think that was one of my thoughts when we were talking about the different stories earlier, is that, the children of Aranek seemed like they were pretty righteous people to begin with. But then they're like, okay, Lord, why the heck are you having us do this? This is hard. Whereas the other people are like the ones that maybe they didn't talk to very much because they were wicked and they were doing their own thing. Yeah. And then an angel leads them, and then they're like, you guys, this is so cool. Wait a second.
Yeah.
This is what being tied to God looks like. This is what the relationship and the joy life can have and the guidance we can receive. This is so cool.
Exactly.
And they just embrace it. And we see that, like how I'm sure we can all think of someone we know who has the redemption story, and they have just the fire and the light of Christ in them, and they share it, and they're just so joyful. And yet some of us too, it's like, oh, I've been righteous my whole life. Like, I don't know, I've tried my whole life. I've been to church my whole life, and la-di-da. We kind of don't take it as, it doesn't burn within us in the same way sometimes.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
complacent.
Exactly. I mean, so some people who are born into, like, for instance, the children of children of Aranek, they were born into this righteous group of people, and you expect them all to be righteous all the way through, and it's just not the way humans are. It's just not they were okay for the time, and that's why they were saved. And the Lord saw potential in them. He saw potential in them, and he saw what they were really capable of. Not that he didn't see that in other people, but there's a reason why he preserved the Jaredites and the people of Aranek's language. What we have to remember about the Tower of Babel is it's not just about the scattering of peoples all across the earth. It is about these little nuances. It's about redemption. It's about finding ourselves, but it's also about God keeping alive the very first seeds of civilization. And that's through language. The very first seeds of civilization Adam and Eve brought out of the garden were language. And if you lose that language at some point, and I'm not entirely certain that we have lost that first language, that if you lose that first language, you lose that connection to God. because it's taken away from you. And I don't think that God wanted that to happen. So he preserved, and he may have preserved others, we just don't know yet. But with the ones we know, he preserved two sets of people groups. One ended up in America and one stayed in Europe. Now, is it possible that others with the same language went to the east? Of course it's possible. We've just got to be patient and wait for the Lord to reveal those scriptures to us in his own good time.
Mic drop. Beautiful. Love it. Amen. Amen. Well, was there anything else specifically that you wanted to discuss in relation to the Tower of Babel before we?
No, I think we covered it.
I think we've pretty much covered the Tower of Babel narrative from its roots to its ends. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And it's interesting to talk about some of these things and to really look at and to make it a study and to look at, is this true? Did this really happen? And to be able to read about them all throughout these different records. And so I wanted to point anyone who's watching to your record. Where can they find the Chronicles?
Okay, well, I'm glad you brought that up. So you can go to our website at www.restoredbranch.com. I will send you that link as well. And on that page, you'll find a drop-down menu, and you can go onto the Chronicles of the Children of Aaron. Right at the very bottom, you can read it online now. It's online. So if you don't have a physical copy, you want it on a pad or a phone, you can do that now. You just follow the link and it will take you straight there. However, if you want a hard copy, and I love books, I've got tons and tons of books, and there's nothing better than holding a book of scripture and sitting with it and reading and marking it. And we are in the process of having a brand new final edition printed.
Oh, okay.
It's probably going to be, you can get that still. We still have that. You can go onto our store on the web page and order that. You can get one of those. If you want to wait, however, by the end of the year, we will have brand new copies, and it's going to be the best edition we've put out there. It's got a pronunciation guide for all those difficult names. It's got a study guide at the back. So it can take you through the important bits in each chapter and take you to where they are. It's going to include the pictures. Some of the pictures we've had done is going to be in there as well. So it's going to be in leather. It's going to be on Bible paper.
Oh, wow.
It's going to be So we're really excited about that. So we're hopefully, fingers crossed, way before the end of the year. Hopefully we should have those, and they'll be available on the website. So I'm
excited. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too.
All right. And you mentioned you did a video. On your Restored Branch website, are your videos on there as well, or do they?
Yeah, if you go to the www.restoredbranch.com, and that's a good thing for Americans because they don't like anything without a .com. So it's .com. You can find everything on there. We have the store where you can buy the scriptures, you can buy pictures. We have a video section where you can go look at the Sunday sermons and also the classes that I do, and then you can also look at stuff on there about the Bible and Doctrine and Covenants and the Chronicles and anything else. It's all on the website, so just check it out. Yeah.
Well, wonderful. Thank you again.
No worries.
Thank you for being here, and don't forget to subscribe. God bless.